Hi, it's Heather and I have a pencil colouring card for you today. I don't think I've ever done a pencil colouring video before, so this is the first. I'm certainly not a pencil colouring wizard like some out there, but I do have some tips and tricks to share with you along the way. I'm doing it on Kraft and stamping it with antique linen distress ink for just a pale outline image that will disappear somewhat as I add all the colouring, so that it's not going to be really noticeable in the final image. I had to stamp it a couple of times because I think I need to re-ink my ink pad. Because I've chosen to do it on Kraft, there's already that light brown tint behind all the colouring that I do. So if I really want my colours to pop a bit more, I'm going to add white underneath them. So there's a lot of white base colouring on this card, but for these little flowers, white is part of the petal colour. So I'm starting with just a rough little colouring in of the shape of the little tiny flower, and then I'm adding a red detail. So red to the base of the petals, and then red lines just over any petal lines on those flowers, and then I come back in with the white and blend. So I'm not using a blender pencil or blending fluid at any point for this card. I'm doing the blending with pencil over pencil. So if I need a bit more red, I'll do a bit of red, and then I'll soften that with a bit of white. And as you color pencil over pencil, it just kind of drags some of the color into and softens the join, or softens the lines between one color and the other, which works really well. It's a good method of blending with colored pencil is to use the pencils and the colors themselves. So a light color over a dark color, or light then dark and then light. I'm not doing white underneath this green. I don't need the green to pop. I've chosen kind of a muted olive green anyway, and I'm just using a sharp tip on the pencil to draw over all the little stems there with my green pencil. Now, starting on the daisies, I certainly don't show you the whole process. That would take a long time, and as you can see, I have sped it up pretty much the whole thing. Sometimes I speed it up more than other times, but if I didn't, you'd be sleeping by the end. So I just wanted to show you at least one branch, one flower of each of the different flowers in the image, so you can see my method. So again, I started with white on the daisy, so I did the whole daisy with just a loose layer of white. I didn't press really hard. I'm just giving myself a base, and then I'm using yellow and orange on the little daisies, and I went in with the orange first, and then I went over that with the yellow and blended it. So the orange is in the centers or in the shadowed areas of petals that are behind other petals, and I do a little bit of orange, blend over that with the yellow, a little bit more orange, a little bit more yellow to blend it in, and that just softens all those blends, so there are no hard lines. The tulip that I'm working on now is the largest flower in the whole image, and so a little more coloring. Again, a white base, but it's loosely colored. I certainly didn't press hard, and I certainly didn't make sure the whole petal was covered, because what you've got to keep in mind when you're pencil coloring is that the paper can only take so much pencil color. So if you press really hard and go for really solid coverage the first time, you're not going to be able to add more on top because you will have saturated the base. Even though you're not working with a liquid, you're working with, well, in this case, Faber-Castell polychromos are oil-based. The paper can still only take so much. And by going in with light layers and then going over the top and adding a bit more, I'm able to not saturate the paper, and I'm able to just keep adding color bit by bit. So I started with the white, and then I came in with the red, and then I'm adding more white, and I'm getting darker on the white because I want the tip of the petal to be white, and then bringing my red up and just doing some feathering so the the white moves down into the red moves up a little bit into the white, and I get that soft blend from red to white. I'm actually using two reds. One of them is the red that I used on those little white flowers at the beginning, and then another red. So I can get my red tulip petals and get some variation in them. Doing the green at the same time. Again, I don't need the white underneath the green because I'm not going for a really bright green. It's more of a muted green. I'm not going to show you the coloring for the whole tulip, but I'm just going to show you sped up, as you can see, how I do this petal behind another petal. So there's more shadow there, so I go darker on that very edge and then just blend towards the end, which again is going to be white with my two different reds. And as I'm coloring, I'm covering up some of those lines that were stamped, so I can go back in and replace them with a colored pencil line, and I make sure that my pencil is nice and sharp for that. Really, when you're coloring, you want your pencil to be sharp all the time, but especially if you're doing a thin line that you want to stand out a bit more than your shading, you want the pencil to be sharp. I did the leaf with two greens, very similar, but one's just a little darker than the other, just to add a little bit of variation. And then I decided to do my pot with white. Because the card base is this light brown color, I thought a nice white pot would stand out. And I'm limiting my color choices. I'm not trying to add too many in. So I've actually picked a brown to add shading to the pot, so that it looks curved, where the light might be hitting the pot. That's where you can see the white. And then I've added shading to suggest a curve in the pot. And then I decided to have stripes on the pot. That's not in the stamp. That's just my addition. Some little stripes to add some texture to the pot. So the butterfly is next, and I want my butterfly's wings to stand out. I am introducing one new color, but I'm using the yellow and orange first, the same that I used for the daisies. But of course, I want to do the white first so that there's a base. Yellow is a pale color, so giving it the white undercoat, like when you're painting, will give the yellow more chance of standing out. So I'm just coloring, I'm actually coloring the little sections of the petal. So I keep glancing off to the side to look at the shape on the stamp. Probably wasn't necessary. I probably could have colored just the whole wing in yellow and then added my little bits of orange and then my final detail with the purple pencil. But I did do it section by section. Partly, I think, because I hadn't decided exactly what I was going to do with it, and partly because, like I said before, I didn't want to oversaturate the paper with colored pencil. I wanted to be able to get a nice solid purple line in there. So some of it is going over yellow coloring and some of it is going around yellow coloring. So I'm trying to recreate the stamped lines, kind of vein pattern lines on the butterfly wings, some of them which are still noticeable from the stamping, but some of them that are a little bit covered up with my pencil coloring. So I keep checking at the stamp just to see what shape the butterfly's wings are, and again using a nice sharp tip on that purple pencil. So I have, like I said, I have sped bits up, sped the coloring up so that the video won't be too long. And I've also cut bits out, but I've made sure that I showed you my process for each of the different sections of the card. Now at this point, I had done those glass vases and apparently wasn't filming. Like the memory card was full and I thought I was filming and I wasn't. So I stamped it again so I could just show you the process for the glass vases, because coloring glass is tricky, and I did a little bit of practicing, and I thought you might appreciate knowing just how I did those reflections and whatnot. So I've stamped it again just to show you what I did. And I started by coloring the wooden table that the vases are sitting on. So kind of there's some lines in that, and the bit that I'm doing here where I'm doing the table as seen through the vases, I've actually lowered the line a little bit. You know, when you look through a glass jar, the image behind is distorted a little. So that's what I've tried to do here. So I've lowered the line of the table edge when it's seen through the glass jar. And then I've got these little leaves and stems that are seen through the glass jar, and I decided to make them paler. So I did start with some white, very, very light shading in white, and then green over the top, which I hadn't done before with the greens, but I did for this because I wanted that look of seeing something through the glass jar. And I wanted to just be a little, not distorted, but just a little affected by the light on the glass jar. So layer of white, a light layer of green, and then just going over those stems and leaves a little bit. Actually did, I think I mentioned I did a few practices with the glass jar because I wondered whether a light, a bit of purple in with the white might give the effect of a glass jar, and it didn't look very good. So I did away with the purple and decided to just go with white and grey for the edges of the glass. So I went over the stamp lines with white, and then I went over them just with a light layer of grey as well, and then blended over the top of that grey again with the white. So I'm going for a light grey edge, edge of the side of the vase, the base of the vase, just that circle area, a little bit of shading was just gave the effect of glass. I'm sure there are more technical ways to do this, but I was happy with the finished effect. It looked enough like glass, and I thought you might appreciate just a method, not the only method, but a method for coloring glass with colored pencils. So again, doing the grey edge to the vase and then softening it with the white pencil. So it still shows through, but it's soft. It's not a hard grey line. It's a soft grey line. And then my favorite part of doing the glass vases was this shading with the side of the white pencil and quite hard. So what I'm going for here is just the look of light reflecting off the vase. So you can see there in my original one, I've just got that for reference to see what I did. And I've got a vase behind a vase, which I could have got really technical, but I didn't worry too much about seeing the back vase through the front vase. That was just too much for me. But same technique for the front vase, white edges, a little bit of grey, a little bit more blending over the grey with the white, just to define any lines that are on the vase, like the edge of the vase and that base, that circular base at the bottom. And then full coloring in there, and then same sort of thing as just pressing quite hard with the white in a curved shape to suggest a curved vase and suggest the light hitting the vase. And a little bit on the back of the vase too, and just seeing the vase through, seeing the leaves through those reflections. I think that worked pretty well. And yeah, I got to do it several times, which wasn't my initial choice, but I think it helped my technique in the end. I've had a little bit of practice pencil coloring glass vases. So with the vases done, the only thing left to do was to add a little more definition with the same grey pencil I used on the vases to do shadows on the petals. I didn't add anything to those tiny little pink and white flowers up the top, but for the daisies I did add little shadows with a sharpened tip of a grey pencil, not on every single petal or every single edge, but enough of them to just help define those daisies. And I did it on the leaves in the tulip pot as well. Just wherever one leaf overlapped another, I do a shadow behind. Where the leaves were shadowed by the edge of the pot, I did some in there too. And then I realized that the back of the pot wasn't showing, so I just did a tiny little bit of white coloring in between some of the leaves and stems, just to show that there was the back of the pot in there, where I assumed it was anyway, and just a little brown edge to match up with the edge of the pot at the front. Adding grey shadows is a good trick for other techniques too. Like you could come in with a grey marker or a grey pencil, even on your watercoloring or stamping. That's definitely a trick that Kathy Rakusen does, and she absolutely is a colouring wizard. So a few tips and tricks that I've learnt from her I've incorporated into this video. So when I had finished adding all the shadows, I was pretty much finished with the colouring side of things, and I didn't want to cover too much of it up because I was quite happy with all that colouring. It took me quite a while, as you can imagine, and I decided to just have a tiny little tag that I die cut out of the same Kraft Cardstock, stamped part of a sentiment, just 2 little words, "for you," and tied that on with a piece of twine. I did grey shadows, just very light grey shadows under all of the flowers. As you can probably see, I'm not worrying too much about where the light source is because I've got light reflecting off the front of the vases and I've got shadows underneath the vases. So it's just to add a bit of dimension. It's not all technically correct. It's just to help it look real. And then I trimmed it back and put it on a white card base. I thought that helped the whites pop in the colouring, and finished it off. So I hope you enjoyed a little bit of pencil colouring from me. All the supplies are listed below and on my blog. So hope to see you again soon. Thanks. Bye.